All right, happy Tuesday, class. Today we got a little bit longer section. We're going to take a look at Lowell, Massachusetts, and the factory life there. We're going to get right into it. Today you don't have an assignment, except for about 4 questions on your test will come from this section. So pay attention especially well. In the early 1800s, the Northeast was filled with factories. Many of them made just one item, cotton cloth. People around the world wanted cotton goods. In Lowell, Massachusetts, thousands of women took jobs to make these goods. What was it like in Lowell cotton mills? Here's what a mill is. It's a factory in which people make products out of raw material. Many girls spent their childhood working in massive mill buildings. Could you imagine that? Young girls didn't go to school, they had to work. In the still dark, just before dawn, loud bells awoke the New England town. Sleepy young women and girls, some only 10 years old, dressed quickly. The sun wasn't up, but their day had begun. It was 4:30 in the morning. Isn't that amazing? Some of you guys can't get up for 8 o'clock live school. And now the young ladies, they were up at 4:30. Whew, we better set our alarms a little bit earlier. They had to arrive for work at the factory in 30 minutes, and if they got there even 1 minute late, they might lose their jobs. At the very least, they would surely receive an unpleasant scolding. The girls walked hurriedly to their jobs at the textile mill, where they would make thread and cloth in the growing town of Lowell, Massachusetts. Cotton, cotton, cotton. Lowell was established in 1822. Mill owners in the Northeast had wanted to expand to make more cotton thread and cloth and make more money. So they looked carefully in the region for a place to build a brand new mill town. They chose the area where the Merrimack, that's a river, and the Concord rivers met. The two rivers made this area the perfect location to create factories. Rivers meant water, and water-powered factories. The mill owners built miles of canals to move water from the rivers through the town. This water brought the factories to life as it turned the mill's turbine or wheels with blades. These turbines used the power of flowing water to turn the gears, which powered the machines inside the mill. With water power, Lowell mills produced millions of yards of cloth a year. So take a look at our graphic source here. Here's the canal, and there's the water. When they open the gate, it floods in. Well, water is going to run real fast down because of gravity. And when it goes by this, it turns the gear. And this gear turns this one, that turns this one, that turns this one, that turns this big one, and that turns all these sewing machines. And so that's how they were making this cotton. More than 5 miles of canals carried water through Lowell. This water turned large wheels that powered the machines inside of the mills. Workers needed. The mill owners needed many workers to produce so much cotton thread and clothes. And because owners continued to build new mills, they needed new workers to fill them. Clever business owners knew that there were not enough men for them to hire for all the jobs. They chose to hire women, thousands of them, to work in factories. Now remember, in this day and age, in 1820s, women always stayed at home. But now we're starting to encourage some women to go to work. In the early 1800s, many Americans felt that women should not work, and thought of a woman doing factory work shocked them. But the hum of the mill cities attracted young women and girls from all over the Northeast. Most came from farms. Workers also arrived from Canada and parts of Europe, and men eagerly took jobs in the mill, too. Still, most of the workers were women. They soon became known as mill girls. Lowell quickly became one of the most important factory towns in the United States. By 1850, that's less than 30 years, 40 large mill buildings stood side by side for a mile along the Merrimack River, and the mills had hired 10,000 women, girls, and men to work in them. Why did they come? In the early 1800s, women could hold only a few types of jobs outside the home. For example, they could be servants, or they could sew cloth. But these jobs did not pay very much. Harriet Robertson, who worked in one of the Lowell mills from the age 10 to 23, described the other option. If she, a woman, worked out as a servant or help her wages were 50 cents to $1 a week. Or if she went from house to house by the day to spin and weave or do tailoress sewing work, she could get 75 cents a week and her meals. So you come over to my house and you sew me some stuff, and I usually would feed you and then pay you 75 cents for a whole week work. Now remember, money at that time was not worth as much as it is now. So if you had a dime then, you could buy a lot of stuff with a dime. When we read the Willy Wonka story, it was based in the 1900s, and a dime would buy you a whole big, huge Willy Wonka candy bar. Now you pay $1 for a candy bar. At $2 a week, the factories offered good. That's twice as much steady pay. That was hard for many mill girls to ignore, as they saw mill jobs as a way to a better life. At the mill, women could earn their own living. They could be independent. Some used their earnings to help pay for a brother's education or family debt. The girls had more options than they might have had otherwise. One young mill girl named Anne Suet Appleton explained, "The thought that I am living on no one is a happy one indeed." That means that nobody's providing for her. So she doesn't have to live with mom anymore, and she doesn't have a husband yet, and she's working and she's taking care of herself. That was something that was not common in this time in history. And check out those machines. Those are all spinning this cotton into thread. Long, hard days. Some women ran spinning machines. Others worked on weaving looms. But life in the factory was tiring and boring. Women often ran the spinning machines or weaving looms. Spinning machines turned strands of cotton into thread, and looms turned thread into cloth. Workers repeated the same task for 13 or 14 hours a day. That means if they started at 5 in the morning, they wouldn't get done till 6 or 7 at night. That means breakfast, lunch, and supper would all happen in the mill. Today, there are laws that prevent children from working, but in the 1800s, there were not. Even young teens worked from 5 a.m. until the bell announced the end of the workday at 7 p.m. And the mill girls were allowed only 2 half-hour breaks each day for breakfast and dinner. Inside the mill, the noise was deafening as hundreds of machines screamed and squealed all day long. And many factory owners kept all the windows shut, even in summer. They wanted the air inside to stay warm and moist. That kept the thread from breaking easily, and sometimes workers fainted from the heat. That does not sound like a very fun job, but remember, the money was good at this time. At times, the stomach-turning smell of burning whale oil filled the air. The oil burned in lamps that lit the dim factories in the dark days of winter. Often workers left their jobs because they were unhappy with the working condition. Others left to return to their families or to get married, but many stayed day after day for several years, and some women stayed as long as 15 years. Well, let's see what the women have to say about all this. Women speak out. Mill owners ran crowded boarding houses where the mill girls had to live. In 1836, the owner decided to charge women more for their rooms. The owners also lowered the wages, saying that they had to because the country was facing hard times. As a result, mills were losing money. So first of all, you'd move to this town. You had nowhere to stay, but you could get a job. But they say, if you're going to work here, you got to stay in our apartments. So then they would charge you to stay in those apartments, which is normal. And then they raised the prices of the apartments and lowered your wages, and now you're kind of in trouble. Many mill girls could not afford to lose that much pay. About 1,500 women went on strike, or they left their jobs in protest. Harriet Robertson describes the day. One of the girls stood on a pump and stated the feeling of her companions in a neat speech. This was the first time a woman had spoken in public in Lowell. There was community support for the striking workers, but unfortunately the factory owners did not change their mind, and soon the girls went back to work. The strike did some good, though. It showed the female workers would join together to fight for better treatment, and they did that again and again during the next 75 years. Eventually, mill workers won better pay and better working conditions. The Lowell mills buzzed with activity until the 1900s, But in the 1920s, many of the factories began moving south. By 1955, Lowell's noisy mills had fallen silent. So all those mills that they built no longer are needed. Yet the strong voice of Lowell's mill girls have not been forgotten. So don't forget how important this is. These women band together. They went on strike to make their conditions better. All right, wage is one of our vocabulary words that will be on your test. A wage is a payment of money for work done. Lowell Offering published writings and thoughts of mill girls. So this was like a newspaper that would publish the thoughts. All right, guys, that brings us to the end of this chapter. There's no assignment for today besides to listen to this last 6 pages. And then tomorrow we'll have our review day and Thursday our test. God bless your day.